Yeah, so if you want to go back and do anything, that's no problem at all.
No, all good.
Yeah, perfect. All right, cool. So, can you just tell me a little bit about how you came to meet Smash?
Well, I knew Eddie and Sal at school, in fact, and late in our teens, me and Ed were in a band together called the Gun Runners. It's like a local band around Welling, and yeah, that's how I knew him. That's about it. That's how I knew him.
And
school.
Was that when Smash were called Smash Like the Blues? Is it?
Yeah. At that point, they were sort of just forming up, and they went through various guises before they became Smash. They were Smash at the Blues. There's, at one point there was like a lot of guys. When I first kind of got involved with doing stuff with them, in terms of recording and things, they were. There was, I think, there might have been like 5 people in the band. It wasn't a 3-piece at that point. That kind of developed later. I think the first time I ever saw them, they were 3-piece. Then it kind of developed into a bigger thing, and then it went back to being the original 3 guys that I first popped round to. I popped round to, I think it was where Sal was living, near Gosling Stadium. I remember it was a house near Gosling Stadium, and I'd gone round there. I can't remember why or anything, but they were in this room, in one of these rooms in this house, like almost on top of each other. It's like in a stack, playing this stuff, and it was that was very early, and Salve, I seem to remember Salve was singing. I don't know where I'm getting this from, but it's just coming back to me now. I seem to remember Salve was singing and playing harmonica, or something like this, and that was the earliest memory of the 3 of them playing together that I've got. But then, as I say, a few years later, because I think that was when we were like, when I was 17, 18, and they were sort of 16, and then after that, I joined a band in London, disappeared for several years, and then sort of reappeared. When I reappeared, they were a 5-piece, and that's when I started doing bits of recording with them and stuff when they were at the 5-piece, and then it went back to the 3-piece, and that's when we started doing the sort of proper stuff, the more serious sort of stuff. I think it was around then.
So how long was it between? What point did they start to become more serious, or it starts to become a kind of serious proposition?
Well, I went through the usual process bands go through, where they record stuff. This is just strictly from a recording point of view, I think. But they went through that process that bands do, where they record stuff, and it's a long process. You get, it's shortenable. The process can be made shorter, but not when at the time. I guess it'd be fair to say none of us knew how to do that. But now that I know how to do that now, so they went through that process of making recordings that were good, but not maybe quite. They didn't have that thing about them, and I think as time went on, just life, the way things worked, for people, something changed, and I heard them regularly over that time, and something changed about the sound, the way they were playing the material. They became a lot more. It became a lot more aggressive. I'm talking about sort of between maybe 90, 91, maybe a bit later, but up to when we actually first recorded what became the Shame single. Which was in, I think that we actually recorded that in 1993, at the end of 1993, although again it's a long time ago. But certainly that was recorded before, say, Lady. Those singles were recorded before they were released.
One I was going to ask you is actually, you talked about Shame and Lady coming through.
Yeah.
At what point did those songs start to assemble? Because the lyrics in those songs are quite, they feel they're very personal, they sort of refer to a pretty specific time.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say about that is, from my point of view, one of the things that I always liked about the band, as well as their individual styles of playing, is Eddie's songwriting. I always thought there was something very unusual about his songwriting, and his lyric sense and stuff. It's always struck me, and his guitar play. It just always struck me, and so I was always interested in what they did, anyway, for a long time. And I guess I was in one. They used to rehearse in the studio I had at the time, and one night I walked past the rehearsal room, and I heard this song, and I was just like, "That's the one," and it was Lady, and I actually burst into the room and said, "You've got that, is off the scale," kind of thing, you know. And that, yeah, it was Lady. It was the first time I ever heard it, and that was the point. To be honest, that was the point. I think it all started to It kind of all started to happen, because it was, I think, a long time ago. But I think it was after that the popcore singles were done, and I seem to remember somewhere along the line that Rob's brother, who ended up managing the band, Dave, he actually picked it out as soon as he heard it as well. I found this out years later, but I think that's about the point where it really picked up. Yeah, where things started to really come together was when we recorded that, and sort of subsequently everything happened, and they were released on a Virgin version and everything. Yeah, I think it was around then, which was probably, I would think, sometime in '93 again, because the record was released in '94 spring. It was actually released in spring '94, so a lot of these recordings were done the year before. They were all done the year before. In fact, it would have been some point during '93. I
was going to ask as well about and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but lyrically, songs like Revisited and Real Surreal refer to some pretty tragic events.
Indeed.
Yeah. Were you aware of those? Are the people you knew? Or?
They were people that I knew vaguely, but not personally. Their names I knew from Welling and what have you. I knew they were people Ed knew very well, and but to be honest, I think that's again what gives those songs their spirit, which is, you know, I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but in terms of records, that is exactly that. You know, it's undoubtedly a good thing in terms of records. But you know, sad, as you say, sad events, which very sad events. But you know, the Revisited, that was, I remember a bit of recording that, getting Ed to stand literally face right up against the wall so he could just play his guitar. The beginning of that was recorded with him standing against the wall. So, you know, less than a foot away from the wall, right up, to get that effect that it has at the beginning. But yeah, very, very sad song, without a doubt.
And at that time, there was like a real sort of DIY or kind of very close relationship with the fans. I mean, Ed and the guys talked about getting buses down to take people to the Bullen Gate and stuff like that. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Hang on a sec. Yeah, okay.
I think I went on one of those, I ended up at one of those gigs. Whether I actually went on the bus or not, I can't remember. But they used to do it all the time. Because I mean, this is still true. A lot of London venues, you know, you're trying to raise your profile as a group. If you're not a London band, which obviously they weren't, it would all be kind of, oh, how many people can you bring? This still goes on, you know, because venues are in the business of making money. So, but there was effort. There was effort involved. There was proaction involved there, without a doubt, and they did that a lot. I remember it happening a lot. But as I say, I think I either went on one or I actually went to one of those shows. Definitely Bull Gate. I saw them there once. I remember that.
Can you describe Smash as a live force at the time?
As a live force, they were very angry, I would say. And for me, angry is always good in a live band. You know, I don't mind that. But yeah, they had something that, you know, there was something being said there, and it didn't really. I don't think it actually mattered what it was, what came over, you know, because obviously every song was different, it's about different things and what have you. So, what came over was this just like a lot of relentless kind of aggression and energy, which made the live shows, you know, not many people weren't paying attention from what I seem to remember at the time. You know, there wasn't too many people not watching at the shows that I did see them at. You know, and they quickly after coming into sort of like the later '93 and '94. I think, from what I recall, their performances matured a lot. I mean, they got a lot tighter, tighter.
Hang on.
Oh, plane.
Yeah.
Should have shut the door.
So it's an early problem at the moment.
I like it in interviews though, you can hear the birds outside sometimes. I kind of like that. Look at the guys walking around at the back of Eddie's one, that's quite funny. It's my mate Julian doing the shed roof. That was. Yeah.
All right, so cool, that was fine, but just from the intensity of the live show, I think.
Yeah, which bit? Just want me to do that bit again?
No. So you got to anger. I think the thing that kind of made them stand out a bit.
Yeah, they looked quite different from everybody else as well, I think. So that and looking different from everybody else never stood in anyone's way. At least then, I'm not so sure now, but certainly then. Yeah, and you know, whether you understood it or not, the energy that came off that, and towards the end of as I say, '93, '94, their performance, I would say their performance matured considerably.
And that obviously contributed to them getting signed as well.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about recording Revisited. Can you just tell us a bit about the recording of the Spring '94 EP? You know, what?
Well, I think the thing you've got to remember about all that stuff was that it was all done on very, very little equipment. It was done on very, not per se bad equipment, but it was not done on top flight gear. It was done on, the equipment wasn't that great, because that's what, there was no Virgin involved then. This was, this was the band making a record. It wasn't, backed by anybody. Dave, there was the band and Dave and me, basically making these records. And it was done on a 12-track recorder, analog 12-track, little Studio Master desk, fairly budget effects and stuff and what have you. So, and the whole of that EP was done that way. The version of Shame, the three of the tracks, which way around to go? Three of the tracks were recorded in one session, and Lady and I think it was Lady and Revisited was a different session. That was for a single. That was actually done as a single. The recordings of Shame, Real Surreal, and the other track, which I can't remember the name of, which is quite embarrassing,
Drugs Again.
Drugs Again, yeah. The recordings of Shame Real to Real and Drugs Again were from a previous earlier session, which was mixed and put out on tape, I think, and then remixed for the single. I remixed it for the single. The thing I always remember about doing all of it was there would always be an altercation. There would always be some sort of like altercation in the studio, which was good because it brought. I personally think it charged them. It charged them up and got the best out of them. The work we've done recently, that hasn't happened. It's been a lot more kind of mellow. But I always remember when we were recording Lady. I remember that session, Lady and Revisited. Rob set his drums up and he had this blue drum kit. What I remember about it was blue, and he'd had it for it. You know, I couldn't remember a time he didn't have that drum kit. And the thing about it was, it always sounded really good. The kit always sounded good. It always had sounded good. But they were gigging a lot more by then. There was a lot more shows going on, and they turned up and they set it up, and it looked like it always had. And I put the mics on it, and I could see him from the control room, and I was looking out, and they were playing. And every time he hit the rack tom, which was came out of the bass drum on a spline type of thing. Every time he hit it, it swung out from under the mic. The mic's over the top and the tom's there, and he hit it, and because it hit it, it swung out. I'll never forget that. Every time he hit it. That's the sort of position they were in at that point. I mean, there was no backing, and there was a nut missing off the clamp, but there was no nut.
It's funny, but my favourite bit of that whole EP is probably that little drum break.
That bit, yeah. I remember riding that up. I'm not on the desk. Remember that? Yeah.
That's a magical bit, that.
Yeah, it's a great. It's a magical record. You know, it's still as good as it ever was, I think. You know, it'd been lovely. It'd have been lovely to have. You know, perhaps it would have been really. Equipment doesn't make records. People make records. Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
Equipment doesn't make records. People make records. But the great thing about good equipment is it makes it much easier. That's the thing. Now, for me, that stuff that we did, the Spring '94 EP, just absolutely proves that. Because it wasn't the worst gear in the world, but it certainly wasn't the best. And the gear did a great job, and the band, the record is made by the people that made the record. It's not made by the gear. And I mean that's true even more now than it was then, because with the digital revolution and everything, that even seems to have changed slightly. But at that time there was none of that, none of it. There was no editing. There was nothing. You just made the record, and the record worked or it didn't. And what the major thing that would have made the record work, and again across the board, not only Smash but any band that was recording at that time, and before the advent of digital, what made the record work was the band, whether it rocked or not, and they rocked, and there's no question about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you say a record that's produced on very limited equipment as well finds its way onto Top of the Pops, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in a way, it was made on more equipment than a lot of Motown. So saying it wasn't made on the best equipment doesn't actually kind of, like, that's not to say we made it on a cassette recorder. That's not what happened. Although it was actually a cassette tape multi-track that was used, it's a high quality multi-track. You know, the sound off that the Akai MG14D was quite revered at the time as being, it had its problems, you know, a lot of tape drop because it was cassette, stuff like that, but it was a great sounding machine without a doubt. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't made straight to stereo, but you know, it wasn't made in Abbey Road or Air or Olympic or something. It wasn't made in a big studio. It was made in a little studio, and not a particularly well equipped little studio either. But you know, it had the gear, and it's not the gear that makes the records. But you know, you can't record a record with a stick and a lump of clay. You know, it's not how it works. You have to have something. You have to have something to do it with, but it was really done with the minimum. Really, the minimum it could have been done with. I think, you know, it is quite. Looking back on it, although it doesn't surprise me, it was doable. It's still quite remarkable. But I have a very, you know, I have a very, very performance-based philosophy. You know, if the band can't play the track don't work. That's it. If they can play the track, it'll work. If you put a cassette recorder in the room, the track will work. And that's the thing. The tracks worked. They worked. They played them. You know, it was go back in, do it. Well, I think you can do it better. Go back in, do it again. You know, that's how it was done. It was done by people, and that I think is why the records endure, because they do have that spirit, that soul in them that so many things now don't have. And it's still, you put them on, they still sound fresh. You know, they sound like what they sound like. You know, they aren't hugely. I mean, it was never mastered. It wasn't mastered for the for the vinyl. It wasn't mastered. Or well, it was cut to vinyl, but that's not a master. And it wasn't mastered for the CD release on Virgin because it's quiet. That's how I know it's quiet. So it's certainly not brick wall mastered like most stuff is now. And yeah, they're what they are. They're great. They work, and they'll always work.
On the kind of soul of the band, I mean,
Yeah.
the intensity of Ed's performance is something that comes across on the record as well. I mean, he manages to really convey what he's singing about, and it kind of sort of, I don't know, the desperation and aggression. It just comes across. What was it like seeing that live in the studio?
That actually makes it quite hard to record because it's quite unpredictable. But it's, you know, I know I've recorded Ed enough times to know when he's getting hold of it and when he isn't, when he's right, you know, when he's feeling it and when he's not. And again, the stuff we did recently, it's, you know, he'll do it, and I'll say, I think you can do that better. You go and do it again, and you know, yeah, it's quite an experience. I mean, I remember when he sang Revisited. That was a moment etched in my mind. The first time he sang that, because I don't think we did many takes of that. Revisited number 3. I don't think we did many. I think if more than one, we may have done 2. And then there was a front bit, but the actual most of the track, it was done. That one was done pretty quick, because I don't think it was all to the good, because it's right, works.
I don't think I've heard a song as, you know, as nakedly honest as that.
No,
you know, it's just...
no, that's something that Ed, I think, has got right all along, and still does.
Yeah, well, particularly when you think about Stanley off the new record as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no question about that. You know, it's there, isn't it? It's very direct, and I like that. That's, as I say, always been a fan of Ed's songwriting. Always like what he does, and that's one of the reasons, because it's straight,
Totally unflinching.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on a little bit, and again, this is a question you can answer it. If you don't want to answer, it's fine. When Self Abuse, the album came out, which was September 1994.
Right.
Did you hear it? Did you have a reaction to it?
No.
No. Okay. Fine. Move on.
Can I ask you why you ask?
The band coming back together, or your experience of that?
Well, yeah. I think what you were saying about the year of fame being kind of tearing them apart. I think you have to take into account with that they had indeed been friends for a very, very long time beforehand, and essentially for a very long time nothing had happened for them, and then all of a sudden, almost overnight, it did, and the amount of strain that would have put on them was enormous. I mean, you know, the music industry, you know, as far as I'm aware, the music industry had taken no notice whatsoever, and then all of a sudden they were everywhere, all over, and the amount of strain that must have put on the band, the friendships, the relationship, everything. You know, it's one of the oldest stories in the world, and the reason for that is because it's true. You know, so you know, I think you have to remember that you know, when you say all that about that year being a really, you know, destructive thing, you have to take into account what happened before it as well, I think, you know, to really perspectivise that. In terms of them coming back together, I mean, I think there's been various, over the years, there's been various moments when it nearly happened, but I think the stars just aligned, like, you know, at one point, like last year, or, you know, whenever it was, the year before, just at the end of the year, at the end of maybe 2012, and I think they were all kind of just ready to do it again, you know, to play again like the band that they were, and it was great to make those records, you know, the ones that we didn't make back in the day, and to make some new ones.
That's when I was talking to Ed, we talked about that, and I kind of said to him that I thought it's interesting, like Spring 13 was almost like like writing some wrongs from the past, doing some of those songs properly, so that Ed can then move on and write new material for the Without Regret. Did you get a feeling of like it was just closing the door on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, you know, that's a fair comment. I mean, I think everyone has their own perspectives on these things. Because versions of most of the tracks on Spring 13 I did record back in the day, but they never got released. For one reason or another, just never happened. I mean, I think they were put on cassettes and stuff, but they never got airing on sort of hard copy media, really. So it was nice to actually do them again, and sort of it was nice to do new stuff as well, because it's I think the newer stuff is different, although it's still that band playing that stuff. It has a different, you know, playing their type of material. It just has a slightly different, I don't want to use the word maturity to it, but it's the only thing I can think of, because that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Maturity. Well, no, it's not. For me, the new stuff doesn't try to recapture 1994. It's those guys doing what they do now. You know, and I think that aggression, that rage is still there. So it will work. It's good. You know, it was always going to work. Once they tapped into that again, they were always going to be able to make those records again. It's, you know, it was just really a question of them tapping into that, and, you know, getting the four of us together to do some work in the studio again. I think did all of us good. to be honest.
They do sound. There's a different kind of feel to the band now. I went and watched them. I sat with them in the rehearsal, and I've seen them play a couple of gigs, and there's kind of like white hot, intense fury isn't there. There's a kind of a slightly different vibe to the way they play the songs. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's kind of I don't know. It's not maturing it, but almost like a sort of more like Velvet Underground type sound than a kind of punk.
Yeah. But I mean, they was always pretty cross. They were always pretty cross. But then, you know, when we start, I remember when we first started recording these two kind of mini albums or whatever they are. I remember, I think the first, I can't remember which track they started with. It might have been Kill Somebody. It might have been Kill Somebody. And I remember sitting there, listening to it, and something happened. There was a crackle or something in the mic, but I was just a bit kind of, oh, all right. So I walked in and I said, and I remember saying to him, the only thing I could think of to say, I walked into the live room and I said, I just want to say, I cannot believe the last 20 years have made you less angry. And then we got 2 mini albums, bang, straight down, no problem.
Incredible. Are you really proud of the recent work you've done with them?
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's good. You know, it's for me. It's the standard of material that I'd always expect from them. It's what I got back. You know, it's the input I got from them. You know, to making records back in the day, and that hasn't changed. They still put that into it, and they'll still make records that works if they can do that. While they're feeling that it'll work.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's all the questions from me. Is there anything you particularly wanted to talk about or mention after the plane's flown over?
Not really. I think we covered more or less all of it. I mean, you've got a couple of anecdotes there which are quite good, I think.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good interview.
A couple of things I probably shouldn't have said, which is always a good thing.
Don't tell me what they are.
No. Don't worry. If I ever, you know, I'm still waiting for the moment when I feel that I actually give a flying fuck what anyone thinks of what I say. And that's another reason why those records rock.
Thank you, mate.